That's how.
It really filled up quick here.
So we're good on commissioners, we're short on public.
No, we got,
Well, it's just the applicants,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And
yeah.
their representatives.
God, I was just so glad to look at this and say, oh my God, we don't have like 8 or 9 really tough applications to
This
go through.
struck me as something we could actually do in a reasonable amount of time.
Yeah,
we start.
yeah. Then when this meeting started going to like 10 o'clock at night, I said, I'm tired.
Well, we did do this
really
9 o'clock.
tired.
No, hey,
I
2-3
just-
hours of this takes a lot out of it.
Yeah, especially when you didn't get a chance to rest all day long. I feel like I am tired and I really am not making.
Well, you were
my
never really a late night guy, right? You were like just like by 11 o'clock, you're done.
I mean, Sue and I are usually up at 5:30 or
Yeah,
6
so
in the
that's
morning. We just naturally wake up. and
From
get going.
the time we were in New York City, we always stayed up like really late. I mean, on Saturday to Sunday was like go out, get the Times at 11 p.m., start reading the Times. It was like 1:30, 2 o'clock before we would get to bed.
Really?
On the other hand, we'd sleep till noon. so in fact, now I can't do that at all.
Yeah.
If I get 5 or 6 hours without rolling around and feeling like,
Yeah. Okay, boss gonna start the meeting, I bet you.
the gavel is up.
Good evening, everyone. Cape May Historic Preservation Commission, December 18th, 2023. It's now 2 minutes after 6. In compliance with the Open Public Meeting Act 1975, adequate notice of this meeting is this meeting. Roll call, please.
Mr. Copeland.
Here.
Mr. Carroll. Mr. Cogswell.
Here.
Mr. Testa.
Here.
Ms. Pisagno.
Here.
Ms. Wilson Stridick.
Here.
Mr. Stevenson.
Here.
Mr. Becker.
Here.
Thank you.
Minutes, November 20th, 2023. You've had a chance to review those. Do I have a motion to accept those minutes?
So move. Second.
Motion by Mr. Cogswell, seconded by Mr. Becker. Mr. Copeland.
Yes.
Mr. Carroll.
Yes.
Mr. Cogswell.
Yes.
Mr. Testa.
Yes.
Ms. Pisagno.
Yes.
Ms. Wilson Stridick.
Yes.
Mr. Stevenson.
Yes.
Mr. Becker.
Yes.
Thank you.
Resolutions, Carlin, 1102 Lafayette Street, Block 1113, Lot 1, Resolution 2023-43. Peterson, 244 Windsor Avenue, Block 1022, Lot 2, Resolution 2023-44. Huff, 817 Corgi Street, Block 1091, Lot 18, Resolution 2023-45. Ramo, 266 Grant Street, Block 1019, Lot 7, Resolution 2023-46, and Cape May Historic District Local Map Resolution 2023-47. Do I have a motion to accept those?
I'll move adoption of the foregoing resolutions.
I'll second.
Motion by just Mr. Testa, seconded by Mr. Carroll. Mr. Cogswell.
Yes.
Mr. Copeland.
Yes.
Mr. Carroll.
Yes.
Mr. Testa.
Yes.
Ms. Pisagno.
Yes.
Ms. Wilson Stridick.
Yes.
Mr. Stevenson.
Yes.
Mr. Becker.
Yes, except for abstaining on Carlin Resolution 2023-43 and Hoff Resolution 2023-45.
Thank you.
Applications approved or denied in review. You've had an opportunity to look at those. Do I have a motion to accept those applications?
Motion.
Second.
There was 2 of them.
It was a
I'll
tie.
drop out.
No, it actually was somebody to my left, but it
Yeah.
doesn't matter.
Who's second down there?
Corbin.
Corbin.
Motion by Mr. Stevenson, seconded by Mr. Cogswell. Mr. Copeland.
Yes.
Mr. Carroll.
Yes.
Mr. Cogswell.
Yes.
Mr. Testa.
Yes. I'm sorry.
Ms. Bisagno.
Yes.
Do I get to it?
I called you, Mr. Testa.
Well, actually, I'm going to say yes, but I'm going to abstain from voting on my own application.
Okay.
Good idea.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Wilson-Strodick.
Yes.
Mr. Stevenson.
Yes.
Mr. Becker.
Yes.
Thank you.
Before we get to old business, a couple issues that we want to address. One is, you remember, we, at Preservation New Jersey, the city received an impressive award, and it's hanging out in the hallway. City manager got that up, so we can always see it from here. We also received another award that night, and because it was a minor award, I didn't want to confuse it with the major award. So we did receive another award. This was for the HPC for our participation in the standards book. So I wanted to share that with you tonight, and hopefully, I talked to city manager, hopefully we can hang it next to the door going into the office. In addition to that, this is Mr. Feinberg's last meeting after a number of years as the solicitor for the HPC, and before that for the city. Done a great job for us, and has been really helpful to the HPC in general and to me specifically and personally. So I want to thank you for all those years of service. And I see the mayor in the audience, so maybe we have further observation.
Absolutely. Thank you, Warren. Mr. Chairman, and all of the commission, I thank you very much. And it's an honor to be with you to recognize Mr. Feinberg, who, as Warren said, has done so much for the city. And I don't want to give away the proclamation. So this is a proclamation on behalf of the City Council of the City of Cape May, recognizing Robert A. Feinberg for his service on the Cape May City Historic Preservation Commission. Whereas Mr. Robert A. Feinberg is an accomplished attorney, practicing as Robert A. Feinberg, PC, in Cape May Courthouse, where he serves as the local community. And whereas Mr. Feinberg has dedicated 25 years serving the city of Cape May as the solicitor of the Historic Preservation Commission. And whereas Mr. Feinberg has been a tireless advocate for the preservation of Cape May's historic district and the National Historic Landmark status, and a guide to historic preservation law and practice to protect the nationally significant collection of Victorian buildings in our city. And whereas during his time serving the Historic Preservation Commission, Mr. Feinberg weighed in on a vast number of residential and commercial applications, always with a courteous, patient, kind manner, and with the city's best interests in mind. And whereas Mr. Feinberg has served for over 2 decades as a valuable and respected solicitor for the City of Cape May and the Cape May City Historic Preservation Commission. And now, therefore, I, Zachary M. Mollick, Mayor of the City of Cape May, here do recognize Robert A. Feinberg for his many years of public service and thank him for serving our community and extend him the best wishes in his retirement. Thank you very much.
Make me feel old. Where are you taking the picture?
Good?
Oh, that's a good one.
Terrific.
All right. Thank you, Mayor.
One more round.
And it was an honor to serve on this board with you, Mr. Feinberg. And for those of you who didn't catch that, he also served as the city solicitor for many years. So you've just had such an effect on the community of Cape May, and especially protecting our historic preservation. We really owe you a debt of gratitude. So I thank you very much.
I appreciate that. Let me just say this is entirely my honor. It has been a privilege to be associated with this city in several respects over the years. And what I really appreciate is a couple weeks ago, my daughter and I on a Saturday came to Cape May just to play tourist. And we very rarely get to do that. Walking around the city, walking around the residential areas, it just reinforces the appreciation that I have for the city, the architecture, the ambiance. There is no other place like it. There really isn't. It is a gem, and whatever little I could do to keep that going, I was more than happy and privileged to do that. So I just want to thank everybody for your kind words, and you will be missed on my end. Thank you very much.
Also, tonight, if you've read the email, Pip Campbell, a long-serving HPC member, she did it in 2 staunches. Unfortunately, fell and fractured her kneecap and is not going to be here tonight. But she has elected to retire at the end of her term this year. So hopefully we'll see Pip next month with an appropriate recognition. So, and we, of course, wish her well. I talked to her today. She seems to be in great spirits, but just couldn't drive with a cast.
Not allowed. We've been through this. It's not allowed.
Also, this is what happens when you have generations involved in a process. You get a lot of retirements at the same time. So Corbin has elected to retire. His term is up also. Did you want to make a comment?
No.
I would expect that we'll have. I would expect that we'll have Corbin back next month to.
I've served 25 years. When I first came here, our guidelines, not standards, guidelines were on Xerox paper and a binder about so thick. They meant if people agreed to them, they were all right. If they wanted to get them overturned, they were overturned. Shortly after I came on board, Judy DiOrio, who was the chairman at the time, she owned, I believe, the Mission Inn at that time. She retired and Skip Laughlin took over, and working with Skip, and we got a grant to codify the guidelines, create a standard book of standards. Victor Benson was the chairman of the committee. I was privileged to serve on it. I've been privileged to serve with this group here. I've learned a lot. I've probably upset a few people, more than a few, Fred Schmidt being one of them. But that goes with the territory. And I'm going to miss it. I'm going to miss being here. I might just pop in once in a while, just to keep my eye on you.
The third person of this triumvirate that came in 25 years ago, sitting over here. So Tom, you can't retire.
I think I've been here forever. And I also was on the planning board from 72 to 79. So I think I have the record of being on boards.
And he's also the perennial president of MAC.
Mayor?
Mr. Chairman, I just want to, again, say thank you to Corbin and Pip. Pip was on a little bit of a shorter term this time around, but I think she really had the goal of getting that new standard book in place, and we couldn't have had a better person to do that with the help of this entire group. I mean, the standards book is beautiful, and we wish Pip well. And Corbin, thank you. 25 years, you said?
Yeah.
25 years of service, and the same goes to you. You've advocated so hard for historic preservation in the city of Cape May, and as Bob said, you walk around town and it shows. So I just want to thank you very much on behalf of City Council.
Yeah, thank you. It is interesting because I've been doing this now over 17 years, and in fact, when I joined, Corbin sat where John is, and then I sat where B is to begin the learning process. So it is the way it works. So we have to get some young people involved, and so we can continue to have some continuity and share with them this wealth of information that we have around the table. Also, Pip shared with me that while she's not going to be on the HPC, she's elected to retire, as I said, she is going to continue to be available for us on special projects and things, and I have a couple projects already in mind that I've shared with her. So we will be seeing Pip. So. Sure. Yeah, could you imagine me saying no to the mayor?
Yes.
Don't we have a public comment period?
It's just a quick one. It's on a specific matter that is on the planning board's agenda. The planning board has kind of punted it to allow for a member from each board to consider, and it's on the subject of artificial turf. I know that's probably not very much supported, specifically the front yards and things like that. Not that I want to get into that, but if you would nominate one member, whenever appropriate for the board, to be part of that subcommittee, it's they're going to look at a member from the HPC, zoning, planning board, and the environmental commission to make recommendations to the planning board on the use of artificial turf in the city of Cape May. And again, you don't have to do this tonight. You could do it at the next meeting or whatever makes most sense. But and then those recommendations will go on to the planning board. The planning board will review those recommendations and then make their own recommendations to city council. So just one volunteer would be great.
Terrific. Thank you.
Mayor, if I could just add to that, I think there's other issues that have come up that cross the boards back and forth and cause anxiety among us. So if there's going to be a committee to discuss something like that, let us all think about some of the other things that come up too that
It's a smart
might
idea.
be discussion items that would,
It's
get
a-
all the boards on it, and maybe we would live in harmony forever ever after.
I think that's a good idea. The reason that the planning board punted it, which is a little, we wanted to hear from all the different boards, and so does, of course, city council. The easy answer, and I'm not saying it's the wrong answer either, is just to say no artificial turf. There's some obvious, like miniature golf courses that are already in town and things like that that we obviously are not trying to change. But what are the exceptions? Side yard, front yard, backyard, and then even questions of lot coverage and that kind of stuff. So it was a lot of different details that we wanted to get into, but obviously we want to hear HPC's perspective. So appreciate it.
Thank you. When we get to new business, the city will be up also, so we'll see more of the mayor and city manager. But before we do that, old business, as we get into the agenda. Merrick and McLaughlin, 1009 Kearney Avenue, Block 1097, Lot 8 and 9. This is a non-contributing new home.
Good evening. I'm Pam Fine from Fine Architecture. I'm the project architect for 1009 Kearney Avenue. With me tonight is Marianne McLaughlin. She is one of the owners of the property. So tonight we're back for final approval. It's been a little while. We had to go before the zoning board to get variances. We've gotten all the variances that we've needed. In that process, we had to make a few what I'll call minor adjustments that I think actually helped the design overall. So I'm going to run briefly through those and highlight them, and then I'll ask any or answer any questions that you have to ask or provide a refresher, whatever's needed. So I'm going to start with the packet of construction drawings. And I'm going to jump to sheet A2. One of the bigger changes is the actual location of the house. If you remember back about a year ago or so, we had the proposed house about 20 feet from the front property line. During the process of zoning, we discovered that it would be a better idea if we lined up the front yards of the adjacent properties. So basically, we had a surveyor come out and measure the adjacent homes along that street, and we provided an average distance of that, and that's where we set our proposed front deck line. So you'll see that it changed from 20 feet to now it's 13 feet to the actual deck line. During the process of zoning, we referred to the house as basically a missing tooth because it's sitting so far back right now. So we felt that bringing this new house forward would fill that void. So that was one of the bigger changes. And then a fairly minor change, but I think beneficial, was we revised the side stair, the exterior stair configuration. Previously, when we were here, it was a scissor stair. So we had a set of steps up to a landing, and then it doubled back. We managed to revise that set of stairs, so it was a single stair going, basically a linear configuration. And so that eliminated a more a tighter side yard setback, I'll call it. So we were able to comply a little bit better with the restrictions to the side yard setback distances. So, and that also cleaned up the side deck a little bit. We had a couple of odd jogs before, so now it's pretty streamlined and simplified. And then a couple of other minor changes. We revised the siding. We used to have the hardy board lap look. Now we have the cedar shingle hardy board. One of the concerns that was raised during the last meeting was it was so horizontal looking. So we figured we'd change the texture of the house, give it a little more, just more texture. Yeah. Instead of so much horizontal boards and AZEK and things like that, we'd have some cedar shingle to add to that. And then finally, another change was we added some awnings to the deck surround, and you'll see that reflected in, let me see what sheet that is, A5. So you'll see we have that kind of ghosted in there. It's an awning that is actually present on the house right now that exists, and we felt that it would add some charm, add some character to the house, pay homage to, the house that stands there today. But I think it's a really nice addition to a new house. It gives it a little bit of, like I said, character. So those were really the major changes to the design. And like I said, we're here for final. So if you have any questions or forget anything or need me to elaborate, I'm more than happy to do that.
Thank you, Pam. It's interesting. I think they are improvements to the existing plan. Since we've seen this before and you clearly explained the couple differences, Rather than go around the room, I would just ask if there's anyone that has any questions or observations on this application.
I'd like you to elaborate, if you would, on the nature of the awnings. It's a mechanical, retractable?
No, yeah, just a canvas awning, more of a permanent structure. It's not going to, fold in or out.
We're not talking about boxes and motors and things like that.
No, just like a 2-foot, deep awning. If you see the house today, it's pretty much the same idea.
This is a picture without it.
Yeah, so the old pictures that I have of the house, that was when the awning wasn't installed. So I can provide, photos of the house.
Just the
as
fact that you've
awning.
explained it isn't in a big box with a motor
No,
is good enough for me.
yeah.
Any other questions from the commission?
I have a couple questions. I don't think I was here for the original application. What is the color of the
Janice,
brick?
would you talk into the mic, please?
Sorry. What is the color of the brick on the front?
The proposed brick,
Yeah.
probably just brick, just a clay, natural,
It would be a terracotta.
Yes.
Yeah.
A lighter, not the dark.
Not the black.
and not a
No, no
whitewash.
black.
Yeah.
And is there, the area underneath that's for storage, when I looked at it, I thought it was a garage. And I
No.
wondered, is there any intention of using it as a garage?
No intention of it as a garage, no.
Okay, that's all I had to ask. Thanks.
Other questions? Do I have a motion?
I will make a motion that the application be approved, and just note that although it looks like there could possibly be garages underneath the front of the house, which would be way outside of our standards, we've been assured that that is not to be ever used as a garage.
I'll second that.
Having made and seconded the motion very graciously, I did want to ask a question. No, it's okay. I'm just thinking at the, looking at the garage situation. I think you pretty much handled it, though, about no. If this is final approval, and that wasn't circled on your application, it's kind of strange that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but I've circled it on mine.
Okay.
So it's, but if it's final, your drawings say not for construction, and final approvals are usually accompanied by full construction plans.
So my process, how I handle issuing permit applications, is I keep the not for construction stamp until we've talked to builders and they've provided feedback for costs and things like that. And then I remove the not for construction
But
stamp.
that would, and that's fine, but
Yeah.
that would then require us to put a condition on the final
Yes.
approval that you submit final construction plans.
No problem.
And so that would be, I guess it would be an amendment to your conditions on the.
That's
where you
okay.
state-
It is marked final.
Yeah, mine's
Mine was not circled at all,
Yeah.
It is final.
Are you at the right meeting?
I guess.
Do you have the old
mine
set of
circled,
drawings?
this one.
Yeah, I circled it myself.
That's okay.
Sorry, my mistake.
No problem.
Apparently, everybody's copy was circled, and I must have erased the circle. I don't know. But anyway, that's, I think, a motion and with conditions that.
Could I just make one quick comment? The, I'm not, when I first looked at it, I thought they were garage as well, except the space between the piers is not wide enough to fit a car.
No.
So there's no way it could ever be used for a garage.
Yeah, that was never the intention. And so you have our agreement to never use it as a garage.
Okay.
So we have a motion and we have a second.
Motion by Mr. Carroll, seconded by Ms. Wilson Stridick. Mr. Copeland?
Yes.
Mr. Carroll?
Yes.
Mr. Cogswell?
Yes.
Mr. Testa?
Yes.
Ms. Bisagno?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson Stridick?
Yes.
Mr. Stevenson?
Yes.
Mr. Becker? No?
Thank you.
I believe I'm not voting this evening because there's 7 voting members.
Oh, yeah, it's correct, I'm sorry.
It's all right.
Okay,
We're done.
good. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Happy
you.
holidays and happy retirement.
Yeah.
It's been a pleasure working with you both.
Next order.
He'll be around. Like
Next
that.
order of business, Cape May City, 1410 Harbor View Lane, Block 1173, Lot 1, Harbor View Park reconstruction.
Good evening, everybody. Paul Dietrich, city engineer here to present the conceptual plan for Harborview Park. And I just want to be, this is, at this point, a conceptual plan. We're in the process of going to be reaching out to the county to apply for open space funding. And they have some fairly stringent placemaking guidelines that don't necessarily match up with our design guidelines here within the city. Even though we've kind of looked at this park, it's not as an active park, so you're not going to see tennis courts, basketball courts, ball fields. It's more of a passive park to enjoy the location where it's at, to enjoy looking at the harbor, an arts park. You also see some, I'll say, some native art, a lot of seating options. So that's really what we're feeling. But we're open to having your suggestions and, to look at how to make this park a little bit better for the future.
Terrific. And who is that with you this evening?
Hello. Good evening. Zach Malk, Mayor of the City of Cape May. And I would just simply echo that we would love to hear the HPC's advice on the park. I think the idea is to keep it as passive as possible. It's not necessarily to attract a large crowd. Of course, that's not really something that's been used to in the neighborhood, so we're not looking to do that. But anyone, I hope folks have taken a look at the existing park. I don't think it's wrong to say that it kind of has gathered benches from other parks in town. That's kind of become like the second-hand park for the city of Cape May. I think one issue that Mr. Dietrich just mentioned is attempting to blend county open spaces new standards, and they are new within the last 3 years, with the HPC standards. I think what you see in front of you very much fits the county standards in regards to they have some uniformity within the county, different county parks that they require now. I've had this conversation with the county in that it may not exactly jive with the city of Cape May, and I don't mean that in just aesthetics, but for our HPC approval. So we would appreciate any advice on the project, and I think I'm sure everyone would agree it would be a nice improvement to what exists today.
And I should just comment, obviously, this park is not in the HPC local district, but it's still obviously within the city that, we need your comments before we move forward with the county, and then obviously this.
It isn't, and it's in the northeast corner of the city. And before we make comments specifically to the park design or the proposal, I just wanted to fill you in on a very short history of what was known as the Triangle. This triangle was a plot of land held by my wife's grandfather, and along with Kirby Tompkins, who held the other land in that part of the harbor. They traded it back and forth. And in the 1950s, before this became a park and was acquired by the city, it was used for kennels and raising dogs. So moving it to become a park was a really positive step. It's really languished as a second sort of afterthought. And its biggest asset, I think, to everyone is the beautiful view of the harbor. That's really what its major contribution would be. There are very few places, perhaps along Delaware Avenue by the Yacht Club, but very few places where you can get the kind of view that you get from this park.
And that's why, one of the features we have on there is besides I'll say a pergola in the park, there's also going to be a shade pergola along the boardwalk, right along the water's edge to be able to sit if you don't want to be out in the sun and be able to enjoy, whether you're just enjoying the harbor, whether you want to bring your painting easel out there or drawing sketch and just, use that as a spot to, ponder and move around. So that was one of the features we're trying to bring back and forth. But the shade pergola that's along the boardwalk, when you see that call out, that's like out of the design standards from the county standards. So it's, it's kind of where, as the mayor said, we've mixed and matched some things that we feel are appropriate, but then the county guides us in some of the things that may not fit directly within the standards.
If I may, the fund for Cape May and all the things that we've done, like Rotary Park and around town, we've really tried to say Cape May should have design standards that flow through everything we do in the city. So when you are in Cape May and you see signage and lights and benches, you know you're in the boundaries of this National Historic Landmark. Now, that doesn't go along with what the county's looking for, but I think there could be some compromises here. So that some things like maybe the gazebo that's going in there could be a little bit more of a replica of a Victorian design, whereas maybe some of the benches and other things like that could branch into, a newer look, a little more modern. I know it's really very, very far removed from the historic district, but I do like the concept of having a feel in this community that when people come in, they know they're in the boundaries of a very, very important area. And I think that, I would be trying to hold out for that the best that I could.
I would echo, this area, if you're there at around noon, you'll see a number of people eating lunch in their vehicle to benefit from the view, and of course, it's not that far from Wawa. Every once in a while, I see an individual or perhaps a couple having lunch in the existing seating area, which is not very inviting. So I think doing this park, redoing this park is appropriate, and I applaud the city for doing that. I would echo Tom, and first, the pergola is, the idea of the pergola is not a, in fact, I think is appropriate. The design, though, is very contemporary. It's cantilevered, and there's a number of examples of pergolas in the city, and that it would be more sensitive to the cityscape of the city. So I would encourage the pergola to stay. It's a good idea. I think the design could be a little bit more sensitive to Cape May. The seating, the Chase lounges, while they look really very comfortable, and of course I would support that idea, but again, they look really very contemporary. I think, once again, and that's true with the terraced seating modular system, I just think that could be designed in such a way that it would still be comfortable and just a little bit more sensitive to Cape May's design efforts. So those are the two or three issues, depending on how you're counting it.
I don't know how many people are going to actively be doing things in this park, but the overall impression I get when I look at the totality of the plan, and I'm stepping aside from the specific design of the benches and of the pergola and of the chairs, it just strikes me that you're trying to do a little bit too much. It looks like it's got a lot of things plopped down here and there and there and there and there, and I think simpler would be better in terms of what, I mean, I know that 80% of the attraction of this park is going to be focused on the harbor. It would really be nice to sit and have a meal there. I note the increased parking spaces. I don't think that'll really disturb the people on Texas Avenue, given the way the park is used. But I think you're just trying to plop too much into the park overall. So maybe there's a big bocce ball league that's going to use it, but there's just to me, I'd simplify and reduce the quantity of things going in there.
I did have one thing.
Thank you.
One thing, I want to thank you guys for the great job you've been doing with the parks. You've been taking these very sterile places and turning them really into places for people. That's the great thing. The only suggestion I would have is with the signage, maybe like at the transit center, like we could have the city seal on it, maybe a font that would reflect that kind of font that they used on that building.
Appreciate that, yes.
When I was a child, I used to go over there. It was called Devil's Reach. And there was a big White House with an S on it. You know whom to that belonged.
I do.
And as a child.
Very well.
As a child, I found, believe this or not, peace and tranquility there. And I think that what we have to do is soften the features of this so that we could keep that softness and keep that tranquility. Right now, some of these things look like they belong more in a metropolitan area than in that area. And I'd like to keep as much as we can. I know that we have to compromise, but that tranquility and our brand, and I agree that it's the whole city that should reflect who we are. And as much as we can soften this, I think it would be to our benefit.
Yeah, I
agree.
have to echo that. I mean, my mother would paint from that space with other painters, and the idea of an art park and a celebration of nature and of the view is lovely, and I think it's going to be a wonderful park. I think Jake's right, that simplifying would reduce the cost and also increase the emphasis on the natural beauty of the land there. I don't know if, there is a question about bocce and cornhole and all that stuff. Like, if the concept is to have family fun and activities, if there's a demand for that, then maybe that could be part of the park, and then the part closer to the water could be more focused on like the seating. I think the continuous curved bench, it sort of blends in and it doesn't call attention to itself. And I like that about it.
Right.
The other things that Warren mentioned that are contemporary, they do call a lot of attention to themselves, and I'm afraid they're going to look dated and kind of dog-eared in 10 years.
This is being taped and on public view, but I think we attempted to take the best of what's available from the existing standards within the county. And I don't disagree with any of the comments that we received. I think what would be nice is if we can get, the city really has to present this to open space with the comments from HPC. So I think all of these comments are exactly what you would say to any applicant. And it's our job to sell this to the County Open Space Board and saying that, look, overall, this has a lot of support. And I'm not trying to speak before you vote, but I think most of you would agree that we want to see the park renewed and in nice shape. And I think, in general, we have a nice kind of meandering, nice, you could take out some of the minor recreation, it'd be completely fine. And I think I totally agree with simplifying in general. But at a certain point, the county's also going to push back and say, well, these are some of the things that we require as part of the county open space parks. So I think, if I could just summarize some of the comments, the terrace modular seating would be essentially, I heard a no. The Chase Lounge, maybe replace them with more of the Adirondack chairs that are there as well. The sign will be interesting because they have their own text that I know HPC has.
But we can probably, add the city's logo. I think they're probably more concerned about the look of the sign, but what's printed on the sign, as long as this has a combination of the county open spaces and the city information, I think that would probably still work.
Okay, so that's what, we'll push for that. I think what would be best is getting broad overview of HPC, submitting those comments in our application to county open space, and then asking for a final approval.
Well, I think taking these comments, we'll take your comments along with maybe a revised, this plan and maybe a revision of that, so we can kind of show them, hey, this is what we think your standards say. This is kind of what we feel the input from the HP has given us. And then take that to the county, and then we'll come back here. You know, I don't think we're going to want to use this in any shape or form to move it forward to the state at this point. I think we'll be coming back here one or two more times as we fine tune with the county. But I think what the mayor's saying, I think we need your comments to help support an application to deviate from the county standards. And obviously, the reason why we have to kind of comply with the county standards is they're putting up close to 70% of the money. So, you know, they do get some input.
Well, when
This is still a national landmark area, so, you know, I think we have some cause for.
The county
pause.
is, we've had other projects come before us that are funded partially from the county. In fact, a lot of them. And open spaces seems to be a good understanding of Cape May.
Can I interrupt that more, Mr. Chairman? It's changed in the last 2 years. I think two, maybe three.
Maybe three.
Three. Because like even when we presented Lafayette Street Park years ago with their, an HPC contribution and county open space contribution, it didn't have these standards in place. What the county is trying to do is have uniform parks, whether it be forest-style parks or waterfront-style parks, certain trash cans, certain benches, certain signage, certain seating, all of things that are basically within this, even down to the pergolas and things like that.
They want a uniform within the county spending the county open space money.
really-
So they want a
it's really a shame
uniformity within
we're-
the county. I think we're more concerned with uniformity within.
Of course, it is on our side of the water, as opposed to the other side of the harbor.
And it is their money, though.
So,
That's
so
what they
you,
say
so,
back to us.
so city action usually gets followed by an advisory report of some sort, and you've asked for conceptual, put it as a conceptual application. Do you want 2 advisory reports, or do you just want to take the comments from here and?
I think it would be helpful if we actually had a letter from the HPC, you know, besides just our notes from the HPC. I think to have a letter from HPC just with some of your recommendations, so that we have a formal document to take to the county.
Paul, would it be like similar to having a conceptual review, and then it would come back for,
Well, we could provide an advisory.
Yeah, it's advisory.
We can provide an advisory. Craft an advisory letter that would make sense. And when you're in front of the county, you might remind them of, it wasn't so long ago when there was someone from, the HPC was on the county board, and they were interested in reaching out, not just to Cape May, but to historic issues. So they,
I also think this idea of uniformity among all the resorts, does that mean Rio Grande Boulevard with all its stripes and colors and everything would look good coming into Cape May? I mean, all these communities have different personalities, and that's what's really helps make our county different. But, going back to the county, I would say, hey, we really appreciate your money, but we have,
I have a feeling this is an argument to be made in courthouse, not here.
Well, we have done things that have made our town probably the most unique and popular and year-round resort in the town. So maybe you should be listening to us a little bit more than telling us these weird-shaped things would be very appropriate.
So after Tom has moved 3 knots in a 4-knot tide, I'll make a motion to provide an advisory report with respect to the application that's been submitted, and to include in that advisory report the matters that we've noted here that we think should be in the application made to the county.
I'll second that.
If I could just, I think everyone appreciates and understands the county certainly had good intentions. And for instance, just to give it for instance, I think the county watched different parks being done in different municipalities where they might have some young new mayor who doesn't know what he's doing and he orders the wrong trash can. But in all seriousness, they know the trash cans that are lasting 20 years compared to 5. So they decided, you know what, let's set a standard here so that especially if we're paying 70% of the cost, we know that it's a trash can receptacle that's going to last for 20 years and not 5. So that was the intention. I do think there's a lot of growing pains. And Tom, as you said, we could use our money. We are funding it. You know, that is coming from our taxes in the city of Cape May. And I will say, Cape May does pay a significant portion and also does not have a lot of green space, right? So, you know, these are our opportunities for open space to be used as our public parks. So it is really important for our city that we're included in the open space program in any way that we can. But I would agree with all of the comments. I would only ask that upon our next application that we have a bit of an open mind in trying to work with the county, specifically on a park like this, where maybe both sides can flex a little bit.
Is it possible to see their standards so we could understand what they're?
I would love if any members could attend our application to open space, number one. But absolutely, we can get you those. You're not going to be impressed.
Well, what they did try to do is they looked at all the different schemes within the county. So they developed a historical theme layout with fonts and patterns, and then they had a grasslands or meadow theme. They had a shore theme, and I think they had one farmland theme. So they tried to develop different characteristics throughout the county, but represent, you know, trying to meld and break the county down into those 5 or so different groups and had patterns. And then, you know, they actually did go around to all the different towns, took pictures and tried to find those commonalities between those different things. It just so happens that when you really look at the historic blend, you know, that they developed really doesn't fit, especially some of the amenity features, just doesn't really fit into what we're trying to have here.
They missed the historic theme. They hit everything else.
Yeah.
Here's my question. Have they had pushback from other communities, and have there been resolutions, and maybe there are other choices than the ones that we see here?
The county planning director sent out a memo about 4 or 5 months ago, which was probably directly a result of some of our conversations, and I know some of the other towns have had conversations. So they realize that there are some issues within the standards, and they're trying to reevaluate those standards. So
But they might be
they've listened
willing
and
to have
they're trying.
alternate choices, maybe.
We're hoping so,
Okay.
and that's why we're hoping that, based on comments that we have here from the HPC, that we can take that, have a revised plan, and try to help show how we need to change some things, or have flexibility with things.
And Mr. Chairman, we're aware that this has to go before the State Historic Preservation Office as well. So even if we're flexible here on our local historic preservation, the state may not be flexible. So we're aware of these issues. I think we ask you to look at this in its general terms almost. What is completely offensive and not doable, and please list those. And where is it going in the right direction to give the county a little bit of direction as well. And I think we could use this as a good opportunity for moving forward with any other projects in town with the county.
It might be a good opportunity, Mayor, to, when we get through all this and we have a plan, in fact, to have representation from the Historic Preservation Commission, because as you know, I mean, we don't have to explain to you two, but I mean, it's a unique situation. We're the only National Historic Landmark city, and as a result, you would expect the county would be able to compromise.
As Tom has said, there's been comments already from other towns that have really been more of like, this doesn't fit the vibe of our town. We're another few steps ahead of that, and that it doesn't fit the laws of that we have, that we're regulated by. So we have even more an excuse than any other town in the county, if not further than that, for sure.
And maybe more input into revising the current county's historic design standards into making them something that has more of a Cape May input into them.
But, good, so we'll provide an advisory letter, we'll delineate the issues.
I think we have
that
to
talked
vote on a
about.
motion. I think we have to vote on a motion.
It's
So I was
mo-
making a motion.
It's a motion by Mr. Testa, seconded by Mr. Cogswell. Mr. Copeland,
Yes,
Mr. Carroll,
Wait, what do we?
This is to provide the advisory opinion, favorable advisory opinion.
Yeah, yes.
thank you. Mr. Cogswell,
Yes.
Mr. Testa,
Yes.
Ms. Bisagno,
Yes.
Ms. Wilson Stredick,
Yes.
Mr. Stevenson.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So one last comment about this. This might be a really great opportunity to actually be in service to helping the county develop their capacity to be more acceptable with regard to different communities, particularly in historic areas. So we actually could be doing them a service.
Right, yeah.
Yeah,
Who better than us,
correct.
I think.
Yeah.
Thank you.
next order of business,
Don't go far.
Cape May City, 100 Beach Avenue, Block 1000, Lot 14. It's not rated. It's siding, decking, and a railing.
Paul Dietrich again for City of Cape May. No, this is the Cove Pavilion, and it's really, we're not looking, it's seen some wear and tear, and it essentially needs some maintenance upgrades. But we're going to take this opportunity to kind of upgrade the things that we can and improve upon them. At this point, the roof, we're not looking to replace the roofing. So, I think we've already started to take off some of the siding. So we're looking at replacing the siding with hardy, clapboard siding. Looking at railings, doing the same, having I think there's a lot more exposed, pressure treated probably and painted, so we're looking at maybe a mahogany or an epee top rail on the railings just to have a little more weather durable surface.
Just to explain that a little more detail, that, of course, the railings in the pavilion, it's the top of the wall. You can kind of picture the windows that are kind of like picture frames almost at the Cove. The existing sill was just a painted piece of treated lumber. In this design, we'd like to see it a natural mahogany or epee material.
The flooring that you're proposing is what material?
It would be an epee flooring.
Which we think would really be a nice improvement. As you know, we have a lot of weddings down there, a lot of photographs. The existing flooring actually isn't too bad. It's just 2x6 treated lumber. It is done in kind of a interesting pattern, not just, but other than that, it's just treated lumber. And considering how important that is to so many people, and actually my parents told me a couple months ago, I didn't know this, that my dad proposed there, which I didn't even know. But in any event, a nice flooring material, with a really nice finish, would look much better than the treated lumber that's there now.
This came before the review committee, and this is what I talked about at the meeting when the state was here, this is right on the cusp between maintenance and something beyond maintenance. And in a discussion with the state, they thought it was beyond maintenance, and that brings us here tonight, although what's being proposed is pretty straightforward and I think a quality upgrade, in fact. So are there any questions from the commission?
I think it's a quality upgrade. However, if you're going to use ipe or mahogany, that's got to be treated once a year with like teak oil.
And it will be, which would be a bit of a maintenance issue, but, and we're trying to knock away other maintenance issues as we go along, but I think,
But that's better than painting treated lumber.
It'll bring the color back every year.
yeah.
Well, you actually accomplish that with all the benches around town by either scrubbing or power washing and then putting some kind of an oil coating on them, which, rather than looking like mold that's going to get all over your pants when you sit on your white Bermuda shorts, you're gonna, it's a nice looking, clean surface, and
Right.
and that makes such a difference. I mean, that brings the wood touch back into it.
Yep.
And I think you could do the same thing with those railings down there.
Right. Yep.
So do I have a motion?
Can I make a motion to, render an advisory report favorable on the application as submitted?
I'll second. Yes.
Motion by Mr. Testa, seconded by Mr. Copeland. Mr. Copeland?
Yes.
Mr. Carroll?
Yes.
Mr. Cogswell?
Yes.
Mr. Testa?
Yes.
Ms. Bisagno?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson-Stredick?
Yes.
Mr. Stevenson?
Yes.
Thank you.
While these gentlemen are here, can I just bring up one more item? You are proposing bike hoops to go in Harbor Park. Recently, you did put in a bike hoop type of system in Kiwanis Park.
Right.
And I and other bike riding friends have tried to see how you're supposed to put a bike in this thing. It's not good design. So
I thought-
let's not go
I
back to
agree.
like these green bike racks that we have all around the mall.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
can't back your bike into it. It's not a good design.
We agree.
Okay.
I just want to, again, thank you, Mr. Feinberg, for your many years of service, and Mr. Cogswell. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next order of business, Macedonia Baptist Church, 630 Lafayette Street, Block 1059, Lot 2. It's a key contributing front stairs and landing, ADA ramp, and railings. Would you, let me just get a drink of water, would you?
Okay. I'll be the acting chairman for a minute while he goes out for a drink of water. So if you all would introduce yourselves for the record.
I'm Daniel Money. I'm the chairman of the Deacon Board of Macedonia Baptist Church.
I'm Linda Anderson Towns, and I am the trustee chairperson for Macedonia Baptist Church, also a deacon and a longtime resident of Cape May.
Paul Farnan with Fulcrum Design Group, the architect working with the church on this project.
All right, we will let you go ahead and start with your presentation before we get into any kind of questions.
Certainly. So just want to preface this conversation with the fact that we do know that we need zoning variance. So we are here seeking a conceptual approval. Ultimately, the objective of this project is to make the church more accessible to its congregation. Presently, there is a wood-framed ramp that ascends from the side yard, we'll call it, the one facing Franklin Street, and terminates at a landing at the front stair facing Lafayette Street. The issue with that is, aside from the ramp not being ADA compliant in and of itself, once it reaches the landing level, there's a bit of a traffic jam as the door opens and obstructs a wheelchair, whether that be in the direction of ingress or egress. Moreover, that landing, as it serves the main stair, is just simply not deep enough from a code perspective with the doors that open outward. So the objective is to remove the concrete stair that faces Lafayette Street, construct a wood frame stair in its place. In doing so, expanding the depth of that landing to make it code compliant and accessible and easy to navigate for all members of the congregation, and make its interaction with the ramp that will also have to be reconfigured a little bit more seamless. As we move towards the rear of the building, facing Franklin Street and actually closest to the Franklin Street School, the intention there is to create a covered porch, so to speak, over what is already a side exit and stair landing.
Might be helpful if you're directing our vision to pages.
Certainly.
That relate to exactly what you're talking about.
Certainly.
On those particular items.
So I think the easiest thing to look at right now would be the 3D massing models that are found on page, I would say, sorry. Page 8 of the packet, just before the railing diagrams. So,
Just because I went out for water, and I hate to interrupt at the risk of covering ground we already covered, I just wanted to mention that this also came before us in review. And John and I and Corbin spent quite a bit of time reviewing the file and the plan to help bring it into conformance with our standards. So, just so you know, this is 2 visits to the review committee.
correct. As I mentioned while you had stepped out, this is a conceptual approval that's being sought. We do need variance relief for just about every side yard or every yard requirement. I think the big piece that will require the most attention from this board is the rear addition, and that's facing Franklin Street. Ultimately, what we're trying to do is cover that rear stair and make it code compliant while also providing landing space for a wheelchair lift. And again, that's to make this church more accessible to its congregation members. Especially in the event that there's inclement weather, we hope to provide an expedited means of entrance for those individuals. We did know that those earlier conversations with board members here did indicate that there's really no appeal to having a kind of a mechanical looking structure affixed to this key contributing building. So the hope is to, and the goal is to enclose it with a means of architecture that seems to blend with the building. Now, the building itself is a cementitious stucco finish on basically every exterior wall, with the exception of the rear addition, which is the diamond asbestos shingle look. We don't intend to use either of those materials. The intent is to use horizontal lap siding. It is a small area, but obviously building up to and adding to a key contributing building is something that this board takes very seriously. But I will have you know that, or I just would like to state that it is something that in the long term can be removed. And I know that that is a big sticking point, I think, to the new design standards, is that it needs to be something that can be reversed. And this certainly is something that can be. And in the spirit of trying to make it more accessible and make it more inclusive, that's really what we're trying to do here. So ultimately, any new material would be wood, save for the asphalt shingles that would go on that rear addition, which is quite small. But otherwise, concrete stairs being removed, it is being rebuilt out of wood. All decking, all railing would be wood. All trim, fascia, soffits, all wood. So with that, hope to get more feedback from this board.
I have one comment on your, on the page that shows the designation. The church is actually a contributing, it's the house that's the key contributing. So the church is not a key contributing.
Okay, noted. Thank you. Appreciate that clarification. Still contributing. Right.
It is contributing,
Right.
but it's not.
Before we go around the room, John, you want to make a comment? You and I have spent, and Corbin has spent a lot of time on this, and I believe the roof lines, the material, how it's going to be embedded within the existing structure has been thoughtfully considered. So, John, you want to?
Yeah, this is the third iteration that we've seen of this. So these folks were kind enough to come in on a Tuesday morning and spend time with us twice reviewing what they were proposing. And each time it has, I think, improved dramatically. And from my perspective, this completely abides by our standards with regard to additions in a pretty sensitive way. And this may look ostensibly simple, but this is actually a tricky little complex thing with regard to clearances and how everything needs to fit, both on the front of the church, but even more so at the back. And I would completely support this. I'm not able to vote tonight, but I'm going to state that comment. The only question I would have, I only have two, and that is, would it be helpful to have an elevation of the entrance side of where you get onto the lift? 'Cause I'm not quite sure from the plan what that looks like yet. And the only other comment is, it appears as if you're putting in lattice underneath the ramp, correct? We talked about that? Yeah, and it's a 75% opaque lattice, right? Privacy lattice? Yeah. So I think this is a really well-done job on actually a pretty tricky little project. Thank you.
Appreciate that.
My question was also access to the lift. I would like to understand that just a little better, but I think it looks good.
I'll just briefly comment on that. The lift would be accessed from what is the Lafayette Street side, so to speak. If you're looking at the rear entrance, which is visible in one of these 3D renderings, basically we're having the access.
Talking about the Franklin Street side.
Franklin Street side.
But the lift,
The opening faces Lafayette, and that's because of a configuration issue. So effectively, you can be taking your wheelchair to a point where you can make a left into the lift or a right up to the ramp.
Other comments? Corbin, you've been involved in this.
I mean, we kicked around how to make the lift invisible. Several times in several iterations, and we came up with the design that you have here where, yeah, the entrance to the ramp is, or to the lift faces Lafayette, but it's on the side at the rear, and to go into that rear extension, which actually feeds right into the sanctuary.
Yes.
So, which, you know, makes the lift very, very usable for somebody that's wheelchair or even crutches and that sort of thing, so.
Yes.
And it was, and they've been very cooperative with us, talking about what to do and how to do it. And John did a few more sketches to help him along. And I think for what we want, this is the best way we can do it on this particular building. Now, yes, you need variances.
Yes.
Because even though you're in a C1 district, churches, mosques, assembly halls, and synagogues all have setbacks.
Correct.
I ran into this just down the street in Macedonia, where actually we found out that our church sits 2 inches over the property line. But it's 150 years old, and they're not making us move it. So, and I think these steps configuration, front steps are a real improvement. The Lafayette Street steps are a real improvement to the church itself. And I hope that church is there for another 100 years.
That's why we're here.
Tom, comment?
Well, I would just have to, you all would think I'd lost it if I didn't comment on the railings. And could I propose that rather than having 4 inches between the railings, which is the code, it be reduced to 3, so you have much
Baluster.
more baluster look to it and weight and heaviness that goes along with architecture in Cape May.
Absolutely.
Jim?
This is, recognizing that there has to be a ramp, and that surrounds the church, and that there has to be an addition to a contributing building. I find that the addition, particularly the one in back, and it is separable, poses really very little threat to the integrity of the building. I think you've explained why on Lafayette Street you need to get the new stairs there and to be sure that people can actually come up the ramp and come out the door and come up the steps at the same time. So it's a practical solution, and to me it is necessary to do, and the materials you've chosen are acceptable. I think it is in all ways, and the way the lift has been designed to be covered, it's not at all obvious that it's there, except hopefully to the people who have to use it, and they will make use of it. So I think it's a really great design, and I would support it from a conceptual standpoint, and I would support it if you came back to us for final approval.
Janice?
I was happy to see this application because it's a treasure, and I think it's great.
Jake?
Yeah, I mirror Mr. Becker's comments, and I just want to say that you've done a great job. It was a difficult puzzle, but you solved it here. Great job.
Do I have a motion?
I move that we grant conceptual approval to the application as presented, that once they get the setbacks, they do return here for final approval.
And you'll want to make the conceptual approval about the railing spacing, right?
I'll second that with
Drawing spacing.
in addition that the railings would have a 3-inch separation on all the railings and staircase railings too.
And to be clear, you mean between the vertical elements of the railing, correct?
That's on the railings, on the ramp and the steps as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we have a motion and
Yep. Motion by Mr. Cogswell, seconded by Mr. Carroll. Mr. Copeland?
yes.
Mr. Carroll?
Yes.
Mr. Cogswell?
Yes.
Mr. Testa?
Yes.
Ms. Pisagno?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson-Stridick?
Yes.
Mr. Stevenson?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next order of business, Sawyer's Dowry LLC, 655 Hughes Street, Block 1058, Lots 10 and 18. It's a contributing property. We're going to talk about the patio, a pool, driveway, walkways, fence, and landscaping.
Mr. Chair, as a neighbor and also serving on the same board as the owner of this house, I would like to recuse myself from this hearing.
Okay.
Plenty of extra seats out there.
Try not to be disruptive in the audience. Okay, you are?
Hello. I have not spoken into a microphone in a while. My name's Karen Clancy. I'm a landscape architect with Refugia Design, and I am here tonight as a representative for Sawyer's Dowry LLC. We are their landscape design firm. And I would just like to thank you for providing this review and providing me with the opportunity to come here and answer any questions or provide any information as needed.
Okay. Just before we do this, because we deal with this all the time, and you're representing this applicant.
Yes.
But how do we know?
And listed on the application. And she's listed on the application.
Okay, so that's,
Signed application and by the representative.
Yes.
I think you're asking why, how do we know she's duly empowered to represent the owners?
yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's the question.
But, so she signs the application, but that doesn't mean that
Correct.
she's representing the owner.
Correct.
I'm sure you are. But we must come to a conclusion on how we deal with
It's one
it.
of those technical
Right.
things about authority.
Right.
But, and you know, we actually have our solicitor here to help us with this question.
I
We've
do-
had this as a real issue previously where,
Okay.
in fact, there was an architect's representative who the owner later disclaimed was representing him.
A rogue
Didn't
representative?
do anything about it, the owner said. But that's why the question is asked to you.
I did not know that I needed to bring anything, so I do not have any specific letter. I was texting with Jacob Pashlinsky earlier today to tell him about this. I could provide some written documentation.
I'd suggest that with whatever the commission decides here, that as a condition, subsequently, you do submit a letter from the owner
Right.
confirming your representation of them.
Absolutely.
And we'll make,
So you think we should hear it?
yeah,
Yes.
And then make a condition?
we'll make it a condition as, right?
Okay.
So,
Okay. All right. So I'd like to just begin by saying that there are two items of clarification on the package before you. The first is on the cover letter, which you may or may not have. I make reference to the fact that we've received conditional approval from zoning. That is no longer the case. We have received final approval from zoning. And the second is the application is a little misleading. There are 2 pages. The cover page is checked off as conceptual review, but the second page is checked off as final. We are looking for a final review.
I have his final.
Yeah.
I have.
Okay,
I think
wonderful.
all we have is the final
I shouldn't have
check.
confused things then.
So somebody's ahead of you.
All right. So this house is at 655 Hughes Street, very close to this building right here. It is a historic Victorian that has been undergoing renovations for some time now. I am not involved in any of the structural renovations. We are simply designing, or maybe not simply, we are designing the exterior space. And the exterior space includes significant landscaping. It includes a rear patio, a pool and spa, fencing, and a driveway and walkways. So that is what I'm here to discuss today. We require no variances. Everything is conforming to code. And as I already said, we did receive the zoning approval.
The landscape plan is, we can talk about at some point, but trying to save a little bit of time maybe. I think the question is the parking.
Yes. So the parking requirements are for 3 cars, according to code. And we did multiple variations of how that parking could work. And this was the layout that could fit the required parking and would provide us with the ability to do screening or plantings that would screen this parking area from the road.
I appreciate the effort, but the practical side of this is you're not going to have a car, 2 cars, and then a car directed over towards the side under the tree or something. And we don't want cars parked in the front yard, and the back of the car should at least be beyond the front facade of the house. And it just seems to me that this is going to wind up with people parked in the front of the house. And using this area here, I'm talking about in front of the 2 cars, making that available for parking, which takes you to this tree, it seems to me that that would give us a little bit more comfort that the cars would likely not be in the...
Yeah, can you get a 9x18 space in front of the 2 cars, I think is the question.
You can, yes. I was drawing the cars to show that if a car did slip into that space, those other 2 cars could
I think we
still
can see
make their
that
way
you
out.
put them diagonally because that allows for a path of the front
Exactly.
2 cars to swing out and for one to go straight back. The fact is,
Exactly.
though, the tendency will be to stick that car, that last car, out toward the street. And I think we'd feel more comfortable if you were to take the 3-car quantity and move it further up the lot.
I see. So further, when you say move up the lot, so
In front of
further.
This piece.
In front of where the 2 are now.
So the issue with that is that the 2 cars would not fit in that location.
No. You just need 1 car.
Yeah, you're entitled
Just
to,
one car.
you're entitled to stack, right? So you can do 1 car in front of the 2, I think.
So then this car here, at least theoretically, this car here would be in this space.
Okay, I can definitely explore that.
Karen, just for your reference, it's on page 44 of our new standards that the parking should be not in front or beyond the face of the building, and that excludes the porch. So we're talking about the front facade.
I
Yeah.
see.
Yep.
Okay. So that would necessitate taking down 1 tree, but we are planting plenty of replacements.
You think that would take down 1 tree?
It would. So
Which tree would that take down?
if you look closely at the plan, there should be, I'm looking at, I think we're looking at the same plan.
This is the
So-
magnolia and mulberry?
Exactly, yes.
So you're talking the magnolia in okay condition?
Yes.
Is not, it would have to come down in order to fit that space in.
Yes.
Why, I must admit, I'm having, if this is to scale, this car would fit in
Right, and there's a tree in between it. The existing trees are just shown in black and white, so it may be blending in, but there is a tree in between, just at the front of those two cars.
All right, you have, is it a crepe myrtle and a honey locust, or is it crepe myrtle and the black walnut?
So those are those are on the street side of those cars. I'm talking about a tree that's further in.
Well, the furthest in, it looks like you're sitting with the tree would be the, I guess that's the crepe myrtle and the black walnut.
I see a magnolia and mulberry, but maybe I'm looking at
I
that
don't
place.
see the black walnut being involved. Am
So
I
the-
looking at something different?
The car's parked right over the black walnut.
So the black walnut, the honey locust, and the crepe myrtle are all coming out.
Yes, I assume that's why they have X's on them.
They have X's on them. Now, I apologize. There is another magnolia that is called out as OK condition that is located directly in front of those two side-by-side cars. We were going to keep that, but that would have to go.
So Karen, I think the confusion is, which is the accurate site plan, L2 or L4?
L2 is the site plan. And
Show the existing magnolia or mulberry.
That's,
So L2 shows these two trees,
yes.
whereas L4 does not. They're gone.
So they are there, they're just in black and
white. Oh,
So
I
all
see.
the existing trees
Never
I
mind.
was focusing on
Yep.
the.
Got it.
well, I mean, without getting too involved in the species of the trees that are involved, I think the objective is to get the extra parking space and to move it forward up the lot. And I'm sorry if that means another tree has to come down, but there is so much new foliage.
There
and
is.
so much new being added to this. It's a net, it's not much of a loss.
All right, that is understood, so I can rework that layout.
So we do have a shade tree commission that.
Yes,
Yeah,
would need
sure
to
you
review
know.
this.
Right.
Yes. I understand that's my next step.
So just for clarification, that magnolia that is being proposed for being removed, do you know what the caliper of that tree is? Roughly how big is it?
It is a messy multi-stem, so it's difficult.
When I looked at the photos, and I didn't walk by there today, unfortunately, but when I looked at the photos, it did look like it was not necessarily the healthiest tree.
And that's why it's okay
Yeah,
condition.
got it.
Yes. The client does
The magnolia.
the magnolia.
Proposed one that is an option for removal that would allow for more space for the parking to not encroach beyond the front facade of the house.
The reality is, and I don't want to go too into the details, but the reality is this site, and I have some photos of what it looked like previous to site work getting started. It was a completely overgrown bamboo and English ivy forest that has undergone severe remediation for the past year. So a lot of those existing trees were not in the best condition.
Any other questions for this applicant? Do I have a motion?
How many of your new plantings are native trees, native to New Jersey?
So our company, Refugia, is only native. So we design for habitat and pollinator designs, so they are all native not only to New Jersey, but to the Cape May County area.
So, given the fact that you've gotten your zoning
Yes.
approvals, and you have applied here for final approval, I would make a motion that the application be approved for final approval, but with the condition that you show revised plans that position the three cars as we've discussed here, and that those revisions come back before the review committee before a certificate of appropriateness would be granted.
Okay,
and also
the letter.
the letter.
Oh, and the letter, and
Proof of representation.
And as a threshold matter, you know, an engagement letter or a power of attorney or an authorization letter be submitted.
Okay.
And I think approval of shade tree as well.
Yes.
Well, she'll have to get it, yeah, and
All of
conditioned
any other
upon.
approvals, but shade tree should be mentioned.
I'll second that motion.
So 3 conditions, correct?
Yeah, three.
Okay. Motion by Mr. Testa, seconded by Ms. Wilson Stridick. Mr. Copeland?
Yes,
Mr. Carroll?
He's recused.
Oh, that's right. Sorry. Mr. Cogswell?
Yes.
Mr. Testa?
Yes.
Ms. Bisagno?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson Stridick?
Yes.
Mr. Stevenson?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Have a wonderful
Thank you.
holiday.
Thank you.
next order of business, D'Amato Family LLC, 1236 Lafayette Street, Block 1129, Lot 16, non-contributing house, and this is dormers.
Back in the saddle.
And the records show that Tom Carroll has rejoined the commission.
The living. No, we didn't. And it should be, what, 4 on the side yard? She said she got, no, we've already approved it. Amended it. I hope so.
Hello.
Good evening, everyone.
Turn your mic on, please. You are?
My name is Steve Tomasetti. I'm the president and principal architect of Aon Architecture. With me is, I represent the D'Amato family, the owners of 1236 Lafayette Street. And with me tonight, fortunately, is the owner.
Mark D'Amato.
We feel this is a simple application. We're asking for 2 new dormers on the Lafayette Street side.
Thank you.
Of the house recently, a fire damaged the interior, and all of the interior sheathing has been removed. So at that point, the owners would like to take that opportunity with the exposed structure to incorporate 2 new dormers that are going to bring a lot more light into a very dark upper floor. In the application, we do have some drawings towards the end of the packet. These drawings down here are in the packet, and we've done a little artist rendition of the 2 dormers on the upper part of this board. That is not in the packet. The 2 dormers would be constructed in the same materials as the remainder of the house. All exterior materials none were damaged in the fire, so they are going to remain. The shingles, asphalt shingle will be matched on the dormer. There is currently a green fiber cement lap siding that's going to be matched on the side of the dormers. The current trims and fascia boards are PVC material. We're going to match that on the dormers as well. And the window will be a vinyl window. With that, we welcome any questions you may have.
Yeah, this is pretty straightforward. Came before the review committee. And I believe that even though it appears pretty straightforward, it's too much for approval by the review committee. And so it appears before us this evening. Thank you for the presentation. It looks appropriate to me, and I would open it up for discussion with members of the commission.
I would like to say, after looking at so many houses this size that come in for demolition, I'm really glad to see you're looking at this as something that, hey, it's a nice little cottage, a reasonable size, and if we do some things to just make it a little bit more livable, it goes in with that era where tiny little cottages were very popular in Cape May. We really don't want to lose them all, but most of them are non-contributing, so when people want to tear them down, we really don't have the ability to block that.
There was an excuse to with a fire also, so.
I commend you on saying, let's just make it a nice little cottage. Sure.
And I think particularly so because with extensive fire damage on the inside, you could have wanted to just clear the whole thing out and start over again. But instead, what you've proposed is not only symmetrical and I think fitting in size for the roof line, it gives you the light you don't have in that floor, and that's going to make a lot of difference to you. So I'm very supportive of this submission.
Other comments? Do I have a motion?
I will make a motion that the application be approved as presented.
Seconded.
Motion by Mr. Carroll, seconded by Mr. Testa. Mr. Copeland?
Yes.
Mr. Carroll?
Yes.
Mr. Cogswell?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Testa?
Yes.
Ms. Bisagno?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson-Stridick?
Yes.
Mr. Stevenson? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Time for the game.
Yes.
Sure you want to watch
Wait
it.
a long time for that.
Maybe not.
It's always tough when you're the last guy at bat.
I'm glad you weren't for last online at one of our 10-hour hearings.
Open to the public. We'll leave this, there's no one in the auditorium, but we'll leave it open to the public for a bit. For telephone, do we do that anymore, or did we stop?
Do not.
Okay. No one from the public is here, so I'll close it to the public and move to the discussion. The payment of bills, I'm not sure we need a discussion on that. I've signed off on the payment of the bills. And so I would go to the next item of HPC advisory reports, unless there's...
Well, one of the question on payment of bills is, it seems to me that's a regular thing that gets submitted. I don't know whether we have limits on your authority, but we seem to have in prior occasions voted to approve payments, and I would certainly vote and approve any motion, but I don't see any reason why the chair can't approve the ordinary payment of bills such as these bills. They are legal, bills for legal services. I don't think we need to vote on them.
Okay, good.
But did you see his new car?
I saw the bills, and he's not going to get a new car with those bills.
Okay.
And you know, the interesting thing is, that bill submitted a while ago, it's been already paid. So I'm not sure what this process is for.
Well, I don't know. It's the sort of the left accounting hand and the right treasury hand.
I don't know.
HPC advisory reports. We owe the city some advisory reports. We have those prepared to release. I've just asked Judy to add the city manager as a copy. And so the AME Church and the map, the pavilion, are all in the works. But it does prompt a conversation tonight. I asked Jim Testa, when I started writing, because we had so many of them at one time, it prompted me to see if we couldn't get a form letter where we could just fill in the blanks. It would be consistent and would enhance the image of the HPC for the specifics of the detail. And Jim provided that to me, and I applaud him. It was really well done, as you might expect. It's very comprehensive. And so now we've gone from no form letter to a pretty
Should we say a draft or some stage of draft?
comprehensive
Yeah, some,
draft.
yeah.
What I would like to do, we have enough committees, I don't think this is going to require that. What I would like to do is ask Jim to send that draft to everyone, and if you would just respond back to Jim with any ideas you might have to reduce it in size. I'm thinking if we can reduce it in size of half or something, and we can still get 80% of the intent, that would be really quite good. Did you want to add anything?
I just wanted to say that if anybody here wanted to increase it in size, please let me know also. I say that only in jest, but the purpose of this really, obviously, we're cranking out. We need to crank out these things because the city has finally become very compliant in its approaches to actually obeying the law and coming to us for advisory reports before they do projects, which is a good thing. And we have a chance to reflect on it and get our oar in. So this is a way of telling them that. But also during the SHPO presentation a few weeks ago, I had the opportunity to talk to a couple of the staff members about their process of reviewing on city undertakings, the things that the city has to come to them on, which are defined as undertakings. And it just impressed me from talking with them that they would view the view of the HPC and the form of advisory. They understood that we have these things under ordinance we have to produce as advisory reports. It just seemed to me they would take them more seriously if we had a format that seemed to be thorough and touching the bases and why we give the report and those sort of things. So that really was the basis of the suggestion of the draft. Help the city design a better project, help the city get through the state review process with a bit more respect. That was the motivation.
Yeah, a template with the standard format sounds great. Thank you.
Well, wait till you see it.
Well, yeah, it's a good idea.
You remember, you've accused me of being paid by the word before, so.
I can cut it down. I'm good at editing.
So.
I will circulate it.
And then
to
at
our
our
members.
next meeting, we can have that as one of the discussion points. The next item we're going to talk about is the conceptual approvals. Who is leading that discussion?
Well, you didn't ask me to, but I can tell you where it started and how we would, and we do have our subcommittee, and I guess you and I are present, and Lorraine is present. Chris Gillenshorts is not, Bob Feinberg is, to just kick this off in terms of putting together a document that would, after we grant conceptual approval, because there's now a void. There's just no way that an applicant comes through, gets conceptual approval, and we don't evidence that in any way. So it's possible that conceptual approval gets misconstrued, may get misrepresented, and so the object was to produce, if you will, a notice that conceptual approval has been granted, and then to work through the lines of how you would format that and make sure that the applicant would use that or have to use it in connection with appearing before any of the other city boards. That was the sort of thrust of where we were going, and we've had comments on the draft so far from Bob and from Chris Gillenschwartz, if I remember correctly.
And we were also going to distribute that letter, call it yet another advisory, but we'll distribute that letter to the board that's involved, either zoning or planning. So then they will have something in writing that shows the conceptual approval and the conditions. So they'll.
I think the idea is to get it straight amongst us, circulate it to the other boards for input from them, and then it will be used by us when we grant conceptual approval for the way this makes itself through the rest of the process.
Yeah.
Maybe. I have one comment on that letter. You had conceptual approval and then send it back to the review committee. If it's the conditions are such that it requires a wholesale revision of the drawings, that's got to come back before the full board. The idea of conceptual approval is somebody comes with the ideas.
We'll just modify it.
We'll look at the.
It has to come back to the HPC, and then we can figure out whether it's full of review or full.
Because most of the time, as I remember the CLG, that when they presented it, this was when we started getting conceptual approval. Conceptual approvals were only, an intermediate step before the full board.
Right.
Now we've started expanding that.
I think, Corbin, though, the main purpose here is to have something that, with respect to the action that we've taken on an application so far, that the conditions are in that conceptual approval, and that the applicant, when he goes somewhere else, I'm not so concerned when he comes back to us, when he goes somewhere else to one of the other boards, doesn't misrepresent what we've done at the conceptual stage.
I agree with that part of it, but it also should be that it could have, where it's directed to come back to the full board instead of.
It could be in that notice, it could be under our rules, but yes.
I would prefer reference back to the HPC, and then we can figure out whether it's a review or whether it's.
Now somewhere between Bob and Chris and my creation, no one has moved that along as a master. Do you want me to take on the master again, reconciling that stuff?
Yes.
Okay.
I have a question on that, though. The second to last application that we heard here, the woman came in and said that they received preliminary approval from zoning, but then they received their final. So is this a letter or some sort of a document that can go back and forth between zoning, planning boards, HPC, so everybody can be on board?
Yeah, I don't think we envisioned it as a record, as a docket, but just as evidence of what we've done in a particular case.
But if we take a look at that second to last application, there were some zoning issues that they had to comply with, which really could have affected what we did. And we gave final approval.
I agree, but we can't.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of.
I think what happens is when they come and make their testimony, they narrate where they are. They fill out an application, but if they come to us and make testimony that says, we've by the way, in the interim, gotten all our approvals.
Right.
They're all final from ZBA and whatever. We take that as the statement
word,
of fact.
right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
And the point is it would be helpful if we had
some
similar document coming back.
Documentation.
That's
from
it.
zoning.
Yeah.
Something memorialized, yeah.
But that would be an issue for.
Okay. I'm just
council.
speaking out loud, and I just.
Well, when they grant something, I mean, they could certainly advise us. We've been depending on the applicant to come and tell us they've gotten the approval. I mean, there's theoretically no reason why this board couldn't say, and by the way, in the application of John Jones, we gave him the two variances or whatever. It would only make life complicated.
Let me put this in context a little bit. There are two reasons why we give conceptual. One is because there's a pending application before the zoning or planning board, so we cannot give final. We have to wait until they're done with that, and that may or may not affect what was originally before us. like the applicant said. He could change setbacks or whatever, change the dimensions of the building. The other reason why we give a conceptual is it doesn't go, it's not planning to go to the other boards. It's simply that the plans are too preliminary to give a final. So those are the two things. The concern that you're raising, Jim, is a very valid one, because if it's pending before the zoning board, for example, and they come before this board for conceptual, and they get conceptual, the land use attorney will no doubt go before the zoning board and say, here's my application for a variance or site plan, whatever it may be. And by the way, I've already got, HBC has approved this. And they may even say, I've got conceptual approval. But the zoning board members are thinking conceptual approval for what's in front of them. And that's really not what the commission is giving approval for. The approval is for, the design standards have been met.
There is a possibility
that's all.
that the approval is being construed too broadly. Not in our subject matter.
Quite often it is.
Yeah.
Quite often it is.
Yeah.
And that's why I added the language.
Your comment, your comment was to
make
keep
it
it
clear
to
to
our
the
conclusion.
board, you know, we didn't look at zoning issues, we only looked at design, so they really understand that. And when they do their final resolution, all their form resolutions always say, subject, and it says specifically, subject to approval by the Historic Preservation Commission, because they know it has to come back here. And that's the opportunity to look at what they've done. And we're doing it, this question and answer, you're right, but we're looking at what they've done, and but that may have nothing to do with what the commission is doing, because we're dealing with design only, if that helps.
Sometimes when they leave us with a conceptual, there's also some, but we want you to work on this aspect of it.
Oh, yeah, conditions.
And I think a lot of those, just like you said, they get to the zoning board and say, HPC didn't have any problem with it. That's about all they hear.
That's
We
the
did have some problems.
that's the great generality of talk,
Yeah.
as opposed to presenting what we really did.
Right.
Well, if they have to go, what would be if we were to include that conceptual in our file that would be given to the zoning board with our conditions on the conceptual approval?
Well, that's what we're talking about, Corbin. The applicant's responsibility is to go to that board and show them the document of conceptual
No,
approval.
We will put it in the zoning board packet so that they have it.
Yeah.
Well,
Do that too?
We're putting that on the applicant
But I would,
to send that to the other boards, not this commission.
But we're going to, no, we're going to, the intention is, in fact, to send it to the zoning board.
so it's a double hit? Because
asked-
because if we fail, then the applicant should be, I mean, it is the applicant's responsibility, to be honest.
But it's easy enough for, once we have a document, it's easy enough for Judy to hand it to Karen. It's like,
Okay, so you don't want to travel twice. So we would modify the language to say that this notice is going to be sent to A or B, and not, it's your responsibility to provide this full copy to that board, which is how we started.
Correct. It makes so much sense that that document just stay with the file of the project throughout all
I
of
mean,
the boards.
either way works. I
Yeah.
would just, that's
Yeah, it
not the
makes
way it
sense.
started out, but it works either way.
This is a much more effective, I think, procedure, actually.
If we include the document.
Right.
What my thought is that if we put the onus upon our applicant to do this, and his attorney says, well, we don't have to pay any attention to that, and we know there's some attorneys who have done that in the past, then
Well, the draft does say that a lot of bad things could happen to you if you don't.
yeah.
I mean, that's,
But-
I hate to bring that up, but if you mess up and don't carry out your responsibilities, bad things can
You
happen.
won't believe what we're going to do to you. But the issue is that we distribute it. If we ask the applicant to, and we distribute it, then zoning has the information that they need.
And after the zoning board acts or planning board, Judy could obtain the resolution and make that part of the packet.
Sometimes what happens is I'll ask Karen that. I'll say, oh, did you guys hear this yet? Because I know something's gotten conceptual. And she'll say,
Well, she only takes so many applications on zoning board hearings, so there's a short agenda. So they'll come back and she won't have that letter ready yet. Craig's letter is ready. The engineer's letter comes out early, but the zoning decision is often delayed for a while. So that's the only problem with that. The timing may not be right. They'll go to zoning and they call me right away. We got our zoning approved. We'd be on next month's agenda, and that zoning letter doesn't get to me.
You know, Bob, you've quoted the conditions that come with the other board approvals as subject to approval by the HPC. Could it be possible to modify their documents to say subject to final approval by the HPC?
Well, it is. It would have to be final.
Well, I'm not, I mean, the adjective might carry a little bit more weight. I mean, I agree. I don't think my point was it wouldn't hurt to be sure that since we've been dealing in the final and the conceptual world and that kind of thing, when the other board produces its resolution, could they not say in that clause, and subject to final approval by the HPC?
Yeah, I don't recall whether they use the word final or not.
I think not. I think you were quoting it as just subject to approval by the HPC.
Approval, I think,
Yeah. Anyway, that's just a suggestion to hammer some more nails down into the coffin head.
If there's a zoning letter, I'll be sure to get it.
So,
We're all going to look at it.
we're all in agreement, and you're going to,
Put together the next step in the draft.
okay, and then we'll all comment back to you, so we can actually get this done at our next meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Testa.
Don't thank me too soon. But yes, we all agree. This is something we need to fix because there's currently a void.
Parking beneath the buildings.
An update on that. And there was, back in 2021, an ordinance that was for the standards for the flood adaptations. And in this ordinance...
Wait a minute, excuse me. but
Okay.
I thought we were going to talk about, from a city perspective, the elevating a building for flood. There is an ordinance in place. You can't use it for parking, storage.
Correct.
Or living space. I thought what we were looking at is from a citywide basis to,
You were talking about whether it would be on a new existing structure, or new or existing structure. You were looking at both of those. That's,
Maybe that's where she was going, Warren. I mean, I don't know.
right?
You were just quoting the flood ordinance.
Yeah, I
where-
was just
where
quoting the
all
flood
those things were
ordinance.
prohibited for
I didn't
elevation.
know whether or not, at that point, when we talked last month, whether or not it included new buildings.
So it does not.
It does not.
Not, yeah.
Okay, so that was the first thing that I was
yeah.
looking at.
talks about elevation.
It does, it talks about elevation. Okay, so I have that here if anybody wants that. And then,
I'm sorry, Lorraine, could you tell me what number the ordinance is?
I don't have it here, I'll give you this.
I have it. That's
Okay, that's only applicable to existing
It's
buildings.
the only
correct.
thing you could raise.
And then furthermore, I did get in touch with CGS. He had a meeting, I guess, with Warren, you, Bob, Rich King, when the design standards, and also PIP, when the design standards were being introduced. There were a couple of areas in this that was addressed. One of it was under flood mitigation, which talks about the garage doors are not appropriate when visible. But when you take a look at,
Lorraine, I'm a little confused, sorry.
this goes into new construction, and that's where I'm going.
I might have sent you on a wild goose chase. What- Things regarding the HPC, things that come before us, I'm comfortable that we're not going to approve elevated buildings to park underneath.
Right.
I was looking for that same level beyond the, local historic district.
It was my understanding that we were looking at new construction.
But we already have that.
No,
Where?
In the historic district.
No,
yeah, but
we only have elevation in the historic district, as I understand it.
only
which
the
is
elevation of
new
a historic
construction.
district, correct.
But no, it doesn't generally cover all new construction. And I think what you're saying, Warren, is our interest is in having a citywide, no understructure
Yeah, 'cause
parking for residential
It's
buildings.
not in place now, but I can foresee if we don't do something, this whole second half of the city will start looking like Avalon.
Well, and that's where I'm going. I'm sorry, I was just giving a little bit of background as far as what was on, what ordinance was here, okay? And then the first part of the flood mitigation in the design standards. And then there's under new construction in our design standards, it does talk about new construction should not be significantly different from contributing historic buildings in the district. And it gives site placements, and it gives parking and site placements on that. It's not real clear.
I'm not communicating clearly, and I don't mean to be short. I'm talking about this part of the city. I think the HBC should be making a recommendation to City Council.
Okay.
There'll be,
Could you just swing yourself around to the right?
Yeah.
There you go. That's what I thought you were talking about. Okay.
Okay. So basic Village Green, okay.
I'm comfortable where we are.
Okay.
HBC. But it's this, and we're fortunate because it hasn't.
It hasn't happened.
For whatever reasons.
The lots are big enough.
But, so, I guess it would be like, we would make a resolution for you to take back to City Council, so this becomes city-wide.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
if we're comfortable with what's going on in here, the recommendation is for council to act on what will happen here, which is outside our jurisdiction.
No, I think this, the standards book is clear, and as you all know, we haven't approved under-house parking
Yeah.
in the historic district for new or whatever.
I mean, there are going to be
So,
new construction and elevation
Yeah.
in those spots.
but
And the only way to handle that is to take a citywide approach.
Do a citywide approach and
I mean,
citywide
if that's what we want to do.
So is this for all buildings?
All residential buildings.
And
Donna, what I believe we discussed last time was that it would be a case by case. We look at it, if it's a commercial building, and see if it's needed and appropriate.
Well, we definitely need parking. Spoken as one who lives
Well, in
Congress
a
and
commercial
Shores.
building, and what we're all worried about is, some high-rise or something, but we can mask that, and we can deal with that here.
Yeah. Okay.
It just seems like, as I said, we're fortunate. We don't have this
It's not
phenomenon in
Village,
Cape
that's
May,
a half an hour, you know.
and we ought to take advantage.
But it could start okay. Okay.
So.
I'm sorry, I think,
Yeah, and I did. I went back and I listened to the tape, and I thought I was pretty clear on that was what I was looking at, this ordinance, taking a look at what's in our design standards and the history of what happened here.
maybe it would be helpful if we had a motion and a second and a resolution that the HPC
We'd make a recommendation, right?
is recommending the
Sure. So I would make a motion that HPC draft a recommendation letter for or recommending a citywide ordinance prohibiting parking beneath residential buildings.
Seems simple and fair enough. I'll second the motion.
Okay.
Except for hotels.
Well, I'm sorry, but
Commercial.
I think we can hash it out, but I mean, commercial buildings may
Yeah.
have a need
Correct.
to be elevated and have parking under them, and Lord knows we don't want to force any more cars out into the street than have to be. Sorry, I don't remember the exact, did you say?
So I said residential, but what I'm rethinking is if there were a multifamily residential structure, that would still be considered residential. So, right? So
To me, that's residential.
Right. So other than, so we just need to be clear about what do we mean by residential, that's all.
Anything with an R.
Multifamily such as the Tides?
That's why I'm asking, right? Because it starts to get a little tricky, because that falls under the definition of residential. And we don't want to say single family, because it would be the same for duplexes and quadplexes, right?
Yeah, I mean, to have a massive so-called residential structure that may or may not have been commercial before is so large on a piece of property, I can't conceive of not having parking underneath it.
Right.
That's really, we would be forcing, I know, we'd make things so impossible. We'd be forcing so many more cars to the street. It's not a good situation.
No, and we're not recommending that. I mean,
And when things grow to that size, there's many more ways to discreetly get cars under the building and have facades that absorb it, landscaping around it, entrance, departure, you know. And well, you know.
There's got to be a way that clever people can phrase an ordinance to get this right, right?
But they're not going to say, the house is up in Avalon, it's all up in the air, and there's, you know.
Why not make use of all the space?
Why
Why not make use of all the space?
So the ocean
Okay.
wave's going to go right through.
so where are we with this now?
Well,
So guys, for example, B just pointed out, the new, what we just approved, were the new multifamily residential structures on Yacht Avenue, or just at the end of Washington, right? Those all have garages where we're parking underneath living space. So what's the, I mean, each one of those, I believe, was between 4 and 6 units per building. So where do we draw this line is my question.
I believe we need to draw a line. I just don't know that we can draw it tonight.
Yeah, good.
I think we need to start with the draft ordinance.
Right.
Every one of those houses has garage underneath part of the living space.
Yep,
And they're individual houses.
yep.
And then there's a few large buildings, you know, as you get closer to the water, where they have like 20 units, and all the parking is underneath. Now, are they
As I said, the Tides.
Right.
Well, I'm just thinking of Yacht Avenue, I'm sorry, Corbin. But
So we need to think this through a little bit before we
Yeah.
can write this letter, is all I'm saying.
But it's a good start. I mean,
Yeah.
I think Lorraine gets the sense of where we, what we.
Who wants to volunteer for the draft of this letter? Somebody?
Do I have to do everything?
So I would volunteer for that,
Well, I think the
with
make-
some assistance from Mr. Testa, should he be so willing.
I think the maker of the motion should take the first crack at it.
Of course he should.
Okay. You're going to take a shot at it?
I'll take a shot at it.
We'll distribute it to everybody?
Yep.
And we should limit this to outside the local historic district.
Citywide.
Make it citywide, because we're already doing it.
We're covered, yeah.
So it's really clear if it says citywide.
Okay.
Yeah, and I mean, it's on the basis of what the practices have been here in the historic district, and we think it's worthwhile to spread it to the whole city.
People in the historic district will say, well, they got to do that over there, but I didn't hear anything about our district.
Bob, I have a question of our attorney. This has been a pet peeve of mine for years. I just don't know if we could ever try to do this. The boats that are shrink wrapped in my section of town where it's not historic, and some streets almost look like a boatyard. Is there anything we can do about that? Any kind of ordinance, or does it have to come from the city, not us?
There is an ordinance in the city, but it could be tightened because
Yeah, it's not been tightened, that's for sure.
there's an ordinance in the city that you can't have a boat parked on the street. On Washington Street, about halfway down, there, in the winter, there's a boat parked in the side yard that protrudes out beyond the building itself, so it's very conspicuous and is unsightly. So I think we're covered with regards to on the street, but I'm not so certain that it's, I know because I tried to get something to have.
You're not going to tell us
have
to
the
try to get
people
your
move the
boat.
And I said, well, we don't have it.
So is that the ordinance that covers trailers
About
and,
that
and,
ordinance.
A lot of them are in driveways, too.
About no parking of trailers on the street is unless if it contravenes the state motor vehicle laws, if the trailer is duly licensed. And the only way you can do that is like in Woodstown, where you go into Woodstown, no parking on city streets. You have to notify at the entrance of all your.
I'll let somebody else.
Too much for me.
Yeah.
Warren, I'd like to look into that and maybe check some sample ordinances around the area and see if I could come
Yeah.
up with something and
Told that
bring it back.
it's not enforceable because they.
Because you'll see.
And I'm familiar with that.
The ordinance is clear on the
Right.
street,
Yeah,
but not in the,
finally.
okay, so Jake is going to look into that, so we'll get that resolved.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing where it protrudes out beyond the property line, the house, building
Could
line.
we include SUVs that park over the sidewalks? Because that happens all the time in my
Well,
neighborhood.
I mean, that's a state statute blocking a crosswalk.
But they
I
don't
think
get
they're-
ticketed, and
Yeah, they should. Yeah.
I think there is I think, to that point, those large campers, I think you can park. I don't think there's an ordinance against that.
You can't live in them, that's for sure.
I know over in the Wildwoods, there were ordinance that you couldn't park an RV on any street. And I think the Motel Association.
I'm sure we have that same ordinance.
Yeah.
We're
I
talking
think
about
Cape May has that.
on the property.
Whether you're
Yeah.
trying to
I'll-
live
I'll
in
check.
it or not,
And,
it's not for parking RVs.
But specifically, we're concerned on private property.
I mean, do recall that as much as you improve any of these ordinances, it's also a matter of police enforcement.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, half the job is the enforcement.
it's also public
before-
education, you know, people just don't know. I mean, I've said something about the SUVs parked over the sidewalk
Could I
at
borrow
Congress
this for a
Hall.
minute?
That's our sidewalk.
Be-
The ordinance.
Get him, call the cops.
Okay,
He's got to enforce the law.
We're gonna-
I'm trying to tell him about
But
Jackson
they
Street.
don't.
Jake is going to look into it and report back.
Bet you'd actually just have
Um,
to listen, I'll do it.
The issue is
It should be part of.
the historic district. We've already, we as a group have already, remember the paper with the yellow? The city manager has redrawn that. Yes. What this is going to be attached to Bob's resolution. And just so you know, this has like a little bit more detail because it shows the state and the Secretary of Interior limits. And then this pink portion mimics that exactly. It's that, so there's no confusion. The yellow one that we've all agreed and we voted on is embraced in this one, these pink lines,
Okay.
okay? Right. And this is what,
It does, but one point that I seem to remember, and I hope I'm not misremembering it, did we not vote to approve a map that extended the district southward to the mean high water line?
Yes,
Yeah,
we
that's
did.
what I
This
thought.
map stops at the promenade?
Yeah.
That's not the mean high water line, right?
Right.
I don't know.
We did.
We did
Yeah.
discuss it,
Yeah.
yes.
So if things go
What
out,
is- what-
out onto the beach, they're under our jurisdiction.
To include buildings on the promenade, anything extended.
And south of,
Up the Strand. This picks up the Strand, not the beach.
I'm sorry? So the green is?
No, that's
So what we're talking about, Warren, is this line, which to me seems to be the southern boundary of the historic district, looks like a line just south of Beach Avenue.
no, the intention of this line, which we agreed on this yellow one, the motion was, we were going to expand the yellow one to pick up the Strand.
I believe the actual motion was southward to the mean high water line.
Yes, it was.
I don't know what that means.
That means the mean high water line. It's a defined movement of the tide, and it is on the Strand.
How would you regulate that? What are we talking about?
Because there are buildings that are going out over.
It is a
over our
mappable
line.
thing, Warren. I mean, it is a,
Yeah, the mean high water line. That doesn't mean we
That's not that.
control the mean high water line. That can change over time, but
If it includes buildings on the Strand, then there are, what buildings exist that aren't on the Strand?
Convention hall.
That's on the Strand.
but
Well, the face of it.
Strand,
Well, that's-
I don't think the Strand is a legal definition unless you actually go to a place where it's defined. The mean high water line is. It's a recognized linear
That
boundary.
changes. That changes, the mean high water line.
It has
So-
changed.
So what the resolution says, it talks about the area from the southerly edge of the promenade, not the Strand, the promenade, which would include the buildings. To beach, southerly edge of the promenade to beach is included.
So anything built
I'm simply-
on the Strand facing out,
I'm
which
I'm
is where
simply
it would be.
reflected on what we voted on, the language was southward to the mean high water line. Now, if that's not good, we can always,
Well, the resolution that was just passed tonight is language given to us by the city engineer, Paul, from the southerly edge of the promenade to beach.
again, that doesn't, are you saying what we voted on is
To what part of the beach? The beach where it ends at the.
Beach Avenue, Beach Avenue.
I don't want to make a huge deal out of this, I just simply remember what it is we put up and voted on.
His argument was that that changes, and therefore,
Yeah.
you can't,
Well, but at any given time, that is a defined surveyable line.
if,
And it's, the object here is not to create a problem, but to create an area for our jurisdiction as far south as possible. That's all that is. If it's above the mean high water line, it's in our jurisdiction.
if that changes all the time, though, then we have to,
I'd rather take it at any given time. I mean,
So guys, could it be as simple as, well, maybe not as simple, but the southern edge of the promenade plus 100 feet or some dimension? Since that won't change?
What's the matter with the high water line?
Well, I think the city engineer is saying,
That's not an impossible thing.
But
I think we all
high
grant
water
that it
line
changes.
is a recognized term in real estate
okay.
transactions.
What is?
fine.
Mean high water line.
I know it is. I know it is.
Yeah.
And
Then we're
that's the
not-
reason why.
Then we're not ready to go
I
to
thought
planning.
that we had a discussion
Well, we're not,
last time.
it's not, it's,
So in visual terms, are you guys talking about along the beach here, that the orange part go all the way to the green line? Is that what you're saying?
I think the green line is not the mean high water line, but I don't know.
But if it is,
If it is, that's where our jurisdiction.
that's what you're saying, right? Okay.
the problem that I ran into is I can't get that approved.
By whom?
Yeah,
By whom?
the
City manager?
city manager, and he's supported by Gillen Schwartz. I mean, we can get Bob to look,
I'd like to know what the reason is for bringing.
because
that
it changes, that's all I know.
But-
Okay. Bob, can you,
We want to know. Yeah. So over on Harbor Lane, there's a pink area that's depicted. It's over by the tennis courts. I'm not sure what's going on there.
yeah, this,
There's,
this, let's, we
Yeah.
have to, hold it, let's back up. We gotta get what we can get and make sense out of this. The real problem is all those alligator bites. There's another piece down here, if you look at this, down here
that's exactly, yeah, that was the next one.
and here.
That's what we're talking about.
No, these two.
Yeah.
They are historic sites. I think they should have,
That's tennis
Oh.
courts there.
What sites?
There's a,
these are on our existing
That's
map.
Texas Avenue.
What is tennis courts?
it's Harbor Lane with the tennis courts right there.
This is on our
So the northern
existing
part is Harbor Lane,
2006
the
map.
southern part is
So
Texas Avenue.
there's some sort
Those
of
are
write-up on that site that it's historic?
Right next to where
I-
Jim's house used to be, which is over
This is,
Site?
I know, I'm not defending it, I'm sharing with you.
Right,
Okay.
right, what you think,
It's
right.
on the existing 2006 map.
Okay.
Okay.
And the state was here, and in 2019, and agreed to that yellow map,
Okay.
which is picked up here.
Okay.
So, yes, we can argue that it should be different, but then we wind up in a
Yeah. Sometimes it's, yeah.
Ron, one quick thing. The lots where McGlade's, Primal, are they lots? I mean, do they actually have a tax lot number?
Yeah.
Well, there's probably only how many of them that if we could just include all those lots coming off of the promenade?
I think that's what we did.
Yeah.
I'm gonna blame Pip for this, because I think it was her motion.
Do the high water line.
To, south of the.
Blame Pip, she's not here.
Frankly, whether it moves or doesn't move, that was the motion.
That's basically the wet, dry sand line. Where it's wet, that's,
High water, and they measure it
Yeah.
over time.
High water line.
yes, right.
Yeah, we're,
Doesn't mean what the water
I know.
line was yesterday.
Yeah.
That's extra high water line.
And I think the reason why the state uses it is it's because.
It's a whole other
the
map,
state
too.
uses- the state does use it.
this
The
is the
state
other
u-
one.
To use
That's
it
where
for
it-
jurisdiction to claim, it's
one
from the
does have those
1664 grants.
has
The state claims jurisdiction over everything south of the
I know.
high water line.
that's different.
Captured this one.
They use it.
The
This one,
state
this one,
has
that one.
approved in 2019, this yellow map.
Right?
We did it.
Where is that? Could we see that?
Captured all
map?
the others.
John has it.
And Warren, I'm
John.
sure they have.
Yeah. So, guys, we looked at,
Could we just see the yellow
we
map for a
approach it.
second? I mean, I understand your point, but
Early is moving in with,
this map
moving in with Dory.
is,
So the-
this map is supposed to pick up the
Yeah.
strand.
She's been living far away for a while.
That's what this does.
His wife was just there last.
Same thing.
Oh,
I don't see the Strand being picked up. I see Beach Avenue.
Oh, well.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
I mean, the yellow stops at the
Yeah.
south end of the beach.
that is Beach Avenue.
If you're talking about the Strand is here, and then, of course, the mean high water line is going, but the Strand is the sand south of,
This is got to go to the planning board, which means the mayor and the engineer have to agree. Otherwise, the planning board won't accept it.
There's no doubt that the south end of the beach and the promenade perhaps, and anything maybe called the Strand, is an easier thing to do than to say mean high water. There are all kinds of-
Well, but all I'm saying is they have to be convinced.
Okay, got it now.
Otherwise they won't
And I would
accept
say to them, I would say that although the state earlier recognized
Well, that's an argument to make with them, but
Unfortunately.
as a practical matter, they have to agree to that. They've already agreed to this. Okay, this is what
and
this
they
is.
already use for their own purposes the mean high water line.
and I haven't heard back, and I want, you
You're
kind of want to.
You're not going to get it approved.
Well, if they
Fine,
were,
then let's just revise what we said.
people
But we
on
were,
the planning board do
Before it's
the ultimate,
revised,
have the ultimate say.
get their approval. If you don't get their approval, there's no point in going ahead with it.
and so what I would say was, the commission was of the view that the historic district should be extended southward beyond what's shown here to the mean high water line.
Jim, I understand that.
Coterminous with the state's jurisdiction.
I understand that, and that's what you would say to the mayor and the engineer. But if they say to you, well, we want it extended to the southern end of the promenade to beach, that's what they want to have. Not, I understand what you're saying, I'm not arguing against it. I'm saying it's a practical matter, they have to agree, because they are the planning board. And it won't get approved unless you have their agreement.
Unless you simply take it to the state.
They can't overrule what we do. No.
In practical effect. Anyway, this is not worth
And they
spending
won't
time
do it
on
in our
now.
lifetime
I am simply trying to maximize our jurisdiction southward,
Well,
onto the beach.
Then that has to be further discussed with them. That's all I could say. And if they agree, resolution can be amended.
Get your wine ready.
I think this is what we
We're sending
should
out
go
the
with,
invitations tomorrow.
rather than start another big.
Well,
Get
we're
the
gonna,
email
we're gonna
addresses.
fix all these other problems.
Yeah, I know. I agree. Leave this alone.
Yeah,
You know.
well, you got to do some baking.
I mean, it's so hard to build something, it's so hard to build something on a beach anyway. You need 10,000 approvals for that, which gets the city involved.
The main purpose of this was to
All right.
smooth out the boundary,
Yeah.
not necessarily to
Clean it up.
extend it. You know, that the fact that they've agreed to
Can-
extend it is a bonus.
Can we get this back to order?
It's terrible, we have another subject. You can see that we have a lot of unanimity here, and there's another topic.
The issue is, we have a resolution, and we have this map. We have understanding and acceptance from city management and the mayor. I would suggest we go forward with planning and get this approved. And take this other argument, high water mark and all that other stuff, up at another time. Because the real issue has been back in here where all these gaps are.
Well, there's no doubt that that's the major issue. The question is what happens when somebody wants to build something south of Convention Hall or on the beach that you want to regulate.
So that's actually the question is, are we, I agree with everything you just said, but with that in mind, are we all in agreement in principle that the historic district includes anything on Beach Avenue regardless of which side of the road it's on? In other words, everything, including...
Even the maps say that.
I think so. But what I'm saying is on the promenade and beyond towards the beach. And I think the city is also in agreement in principle on that, correct? So we just need to figure out a way to define that legally, right?
What?
We just need to figure out a way to define that legally.
They think, John, they already have it. They'd say,
Okay.
Promenade and Strand.
Good.
That's what this is.
I hope. Is that clear?
Not to me, but that's okay.
But it's clear.
I'm one voice in the wilderness.
So, we have a resolution, and we have this map. Are we in agreement to go forward to planning
Yes.
and get this done?
Yes.
We've had a lot of conversation, but, yes?
Yes.
Hallelujah.
I move we adjourn.
I don't know. I think maybe we should talk about this a little longer.
Well, I mean, I would vote against that or abstain.
That's,
But, and that's the point I would make.
Well, this,
Or the low water mark.
okay.
All right, so in the interest of promoting what we seem to have consensus over here, I will make two motions. The first is that we rescind the motion delineating the historic district's southern boundary at the mean high water mark, and instead we accept the map that shows it to be southward to the promenade and Strand, which is what this map shows.
Second.
So that's my motion.
John seconded?
I did.
Sorry, that's your job.
Okay, hold on a minute.
Well, I know I voted on it.
Okay,
We're ready?
we're ready.
Mr. Copeland,
Yes.
Mr. Carroll,
Yes.
Mr. Cogswell,
yes.
Mr. Testa.
Yes.
Janice is not here. Jake,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
thank you.
That
Oh,
may,
B. Yes. Thank you. Sorry.
Okay,
I think that was unanimous.
yes, but.
No, wait.
We're okay. Yes, but.
now, the next subject, and Bob, you're going to get this to the next level.
So there'll be a revised resolution?
The resolution passes this on to the planning board.
Right.
Okay, so all that has to happen is this resolution has to be referred to the planning board
With this map.
with the map.
So you're not going to revise the text of
No, nothing's revised in this. Nothing is being revised in the resolution that passed, just the map attached. Then it goes to this Secretary of the...
And you just have to make it clear that the resolution the motion last meeting was rescinded.
I'm taking my map back.
Okay.
You have one, I hope.
Now,
That's it, isn't it?
no, it's not it. We have the use of substitute materials on historic building exteriors. And the trust comes out all the time with these different advisories. This is not uncommon. In Cape May, I think what we have been doing over these years, looking for real materials, is appropriate for Cape May. And so every time the Secretary of Interior or someone comes out with a different view, I don't think we should be changing what we're doing. So when earlier, for example, the flood elevating a house for FEMA, a historic house for FEMA, that was taken right out of the Secretary of Interior's recommendation. So we pick and choose what we take. I mean, that ordinance is almost word for word the Secretary of Interior. So I don't think we just ignore them as they come up. I think we ought to take a look at them. But this just opens Pandora's box in my estimation, and I don't see a need to change the way we do things in Cape May. But
we have just finished a book, a new standards book that says wherever possible, original materials will
no,
be used.
it doesn't, yes, it does, but it also, in the absence of something specific, we do follow the Secretary of Interior. That's where I thought you were going. The book is clear. It's
So I have a question about that. There was not too long ago a bulletin, I think it was bulletin number 43, I might be making that up, from Secretary of Interior Standards, which was specifically titled Substitute Materials on Historic Buildings and Structures. And the question is, that's not within this book, but is that considered part of their standards if it's a bulletin?
it would be considered an update or part of the standard.
So bulletins are considered updates of the standards. Is that accurate? Okay.
But it doesn't mean that we have to
Understood.
embrace them. So,
So I have a copy of that. I mean, if it would be helpful, I'd be happy to email it to everybody for their review and see what they think about that.
well, I mean,
I agree with Warren that it's in our book, that we want original materials wherever possible. And the secretaries standards have been, on certain public buildings, have been ignored. The White House in Richmond has Trex decking on their plank, their porch. They've had it there for 10 years, or maybe not quite 10, but, So, there have been exceptions done to historic buildings that are owned by the federal government. But our design standards have been clear, and we have been on using original materials. I say, there's no need for us to change.
Yeah, I don't think I'm thinking of this in terms of a change, but I am thinking that I'd like to see the bulletin, just to see where the developments.
I found it really informative, and to me, it informs how I talk about it.
And when you see it, it at least lets you think about what's being developed and whether our design standards continue to be appropriate as the future comes up. But right now, I don't think anybody's advocating specific changes.
But rather than make a ironclad rule that we're going to stick with our standards exactly the way they are, 3 meetings ago, a lady on Windsor Avenue came with a substitute material for cedar shakes and had a lot of good reasons for it, fireproofing, things like that. And we sort of said, why don't you go ahead and apply? We'll take a look at it. So, I mean, we've also indicated that we're not closed-minded to something that looks exactly the same. And John, I remember you read right in the standards saying, that is what we should do, if for very good reasons, there's a substitute material, such as fireproofing, that we should keep our mind open to that. Environmental protection, saving natural resources, and I bet you anything she's going to come back with.
She applied and was denied.
What?
She applied and was denied.
So you're prophetic. She applied.
What happened to her?
Well, she just applied.
Well,
Just applied.
I reviewed it, you can distribute it, and we can talk about it next month. I think we just went through a rigorous exercise and developed standards that are comprehensive and clear. And if we're going to change every time a bulletin comes out, then.
Yeah, I don't think that's what's being said here. What's being said is we should be smart enough and informed enough to know if when particular cases come up, we might want to consider that, just like an HPC bulletin to our design standards. No reason to ignore it.
And there's wiggle room in what we did in these standards to allow for specific cases if it's appropriate. In other words, it's not black and white, nor should it be, in my view. There should be some ambiguity in there.
I'd like to read the bulletin. Okay.
Yeah.
No?
We'll distribute the bulletin. They should come up, though. I know those bulletins come to my email, but I don't know why. The other issue is.
You have it?
Yeah, you have it, right? So you'll distribute it to everybody?
Thanks, Judy.
The artificial turf question, does someone want to volunteer to sit on that?
I'll volunteer.
Our position is pretty clear.
Yeah.
We've approved it in backyards and stuff.
Right.
Just so it's not visible from the street or side yard.
Case by case, right?
But not in the front, Jake.
Well, this is really easy. Anything else come before this august group?
Corbin was just about to say.
I move we adjourn.
And he should have that privilege since this is his last meeting.
Yes.
I guess we are.
We are adjourned.